today we're going to be talking about how you can craft a strong supercurricular portfolio for your global university applications and how you can really stand out. I'm really curious to learn about what supercurricular means, and to help me understand that is Raphael Peters is the managing director at ProEd, and he has previously also been at OIC. So Rafi, maybe you can just briefly introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Zubair. Yeah, so also the feeling's mutual. Zubair and I have known each other for nearly coming up to 2 years, I think now. So a while, and really admire what you're doing with ZNotes, and looking forward to seeing what we can do for your community. But in terms of a little bit about my background, I think firstly I'll address the supercurricular kind of extracurricular background difference shortly, but I'll start with a little bit about my journey to kind of starting ProEd, and kind of the reasons behind why I think work experience is really important. But to begin with, I've been very blessed and fortunate to have worked in some of the best schools around the world. So my career started at Oxford International College, which is currently the #1 ranked school in England. They're super academic. They get global top university applications all over the world, and that's headed up by a very, very kind of famous chief education officer, Yasmin Sarwar, who I'm sure many of you would have heard of. I had the privilege of working under her mentorship for nearly 6 years before moving to ProEd, and I think that time at a top school really helped me understand what are the essential ingredients in terms of how we prepare students for not just UK kind of Russell Group universities, but also Ivy League and other global strategic pathways worldwide. So since my time at OIC, for the last 2 years, just over 2 years now, I've been managing director at ProEd. And we will talk a little bit more about ProEd at the end, but in a nutshell, we provide immersive career experiences and work experience programs held in the UK, primarily at Imperial College London, over the course of the summer, and also other places year round. So excited to talk a little bit more about that later, but that's a very brief introduction to me and my background.
Thanks, Rafi, and really excited to kind of glean all that insights that you've captured during your time at such an amazing school. I might do an introduction myself as well. Hello, everyone. My name is Zubair. I'm the founder of ZNotes, and it's been amazing to see how this Discord community has grown and thrived in the last few months and years. It started off in 2018, when Discord was not even as big as it is today. But to go from hundreds of members to today over 36,000 we hit yesterday is just incredible. I'm working on ZNotes predominantly, but I also engage in other roles, specifically as a young leader for this Generation 17 initiative between UNDP and Samsung. I studied mathematics at UCL. I graduated back in 2020, and today ZNotes has been able to impact the lives of over 5 million students, and I'm very grateful for everyone who is part of this community that makes that happen through peer learning that you guys do together, through the content creators, through the ambassadors, and the amazing interns who make this all happen. So we'll dive right in. Rafi, what is a supercurricular portfolio?
Yeah, really good question. So I think this is one of the biggest misconceptions, I'd say, in my experience working at top schools, is lots of students and schools struggle to understand kind of the difference between extracurricular and supercurricular. So if you think of an extracurricular activity or skill, that is something that doesn't necessarily support your subject of interest. That could be great at piano, that could be captain of a sports team, largely not related to your application or to your subject of interest. When we talk about supercurricular skills and portfolios, we're talking about what are you doing as a student, as an individual, that outside of the school curriculum, outside of your GCSE, A-level, IB curriculum or equivalent, that is really going to demonstrate to the world and to admissions tutors that you are passionate and dedicated and committed to your subject of interest. We'll go in a little bit into what that specifically, what that means. But when we've got 4,000 characters or so to make an impression in an entry essay to through UCAS, through personal statement, or even to a US university, you really have to pick wisely as to what you include. And often we say, generally, you'd favour supercurricular over extracurricular skills. Now, there are some nuances with that with regard to kind of US applications and other things like that. But on the whole, supercurricular portfolio development is super, super important.
Amazing. And just to kind of just like to, I guess, to make it more clear, we're talking about things which are outside of your academic studies. So you're not doing your A-levels or GCSEs, but you're doing something which contributes to your degree of choice. So it is still academic, but not necessarily something that's within, let's say, the syllabus of the AS exams.
Yes, could be academic, could be vocational. Again, I think that possibly the next slide or the slide after we'll come into kind of the specifics of exactly what you could be considering. But first, we'll perhaps think about what qualities do we look for, or do top admissions test tutors look for and universities look for in their applicants. So if we go into the next slide, generally speaking, if you think about prerequisites to top UK or Ivy League universities, generally speaking, the prerequisites are very similar. The first thing is top grades are a given. That's kind of gets your foot in the door, right? So in the UK or US, you've got top grades at GCSE or A-level, often a heavy emphasis irrespective of what your course choice is on things like English and science at GCSE level. And then obviously at A-level or IB or equivalent, you're looking at kind of honing in on your interest a little bit further. But A's, A-stars at that level are very much a prerequisite if you're looking at top unis. Admissions test scores. So in the US, that's things like the SAT, ACT. In the UK, that's kind of course specific. When you're looking at Oxbridge Medical School, other things, there are another layer after your A-levels that more hoops you need to jump through. That will kind of separate the good from the best. So admissions tests, things like, I don't know, for those of you that are considering medical school, things like the UCAT, the BMAT, and then of course university interviews as well. But ultimately, what we're asking is, what activities are you taking part in that will demonstrate to admissions tutors that you are committed and passionate to your subject, outside of your kind of standard school curriculum?
And why is this important? And maybe this slide can help us answer that.
Yeah, so this is a really interesting slide, and something that I speak about a lot, and it's something called, it's sourced from the ADECO report, which is the single biggest studies and database of questions asked to top CEOs, top company directors from all over the world. And this section of the paper is dedicated to what are employers looking for. There's quite a lot of bad press about universities, with universities asking employers, what do they need? And employers are saying, universities, you're not preparing our students for the working world in a way that we need them to. We're having to retrain them. And I know as a small business owner myself, when I look at employing people, it is a work experience and attitude over education qualification. Now, that's not to say that education isn't important, but it goes to show that, you shouldn't necessarily be focusing all of your time on your education. There are other areas. So that's reflected in the report here. 35% of employers and top executives, 35% of them place importance on that. 55, so roughly 2/3 of employers would agree that work experience is really important, and attitude is by far the most important attribute to being a successful employee and getting success in job applications. So it's just a really good way to start thinking about yourself holistically when it comes to university and beyond.
Absolutely, and I think that's such an important pathway, and I'm glad that we're kind of touching upon this as well, because of course university is kind of a launch pad for opportunities in careers, but also entrepreneurship. And at the end of the day, what it boils down to is like your passion and commitment, and that's reflected in your attitude. So let's dive into a bit more deeper. How can we cultivate this set of commitment and passion and display it to the actual kind of applicant admissions tutors as well?
Yeah, so there's perhaps some anecdotal stories I can share here as well, but just as in a nutshell, the types of activity that in my time at OIC students would look at, and they actually have a whole department that is dedicated to making sure students get this robust kind of supercurricular support. Things like work experience in the school holidays. What are you showing a vocational interest in your subject, even if that's family, friends, if that's applying for work experience. If that's even volunteering, something that is showing, okay, I'm actually taking time voluntarily out of my week, out of my day, out of my school holidays to show a vocational interest in my subject. That goes a huge way. It also provides tangible content. If it's career specific or course specific, let's say you want to apply for engineering, if you can get work placements or work experience in these industries that you're interested in, then you have tangible content that you can refer back to when it comes to personal statements, when it comes to interview. So super important and really, really valuable. Evidence of wider reading. You wouldn't believe the number of students that when I used to kind of interview students for admissions into OIC back in the day, they might be 16, 17, and I'd say, great, your grades are really strong. What do you think you want to be when you're older? What do you want to study at university? And they'll say, engineering. And I'll say, great, tell me about engineering. And they struggle. A lot of students struggle to answer that question. It's, you really need to develop a fluency in conveying to people why you're passionate about a subject. And Yasmin from OIC has demonstrated this perfectly, where she's asked people in the audience before, what's your favorite subject or what's your favorite hobby? And there was a student, I won't forget this, there was a student who said, I'm obsessed with football. I love Manchester United, and started talking all about it. He could quote all the stats, all the metrics, even dating back to before he was born, everything about the history of the club. And she was like, that's fantastic. If you're looking at, if you were doing an undergraduate degree in Manchester United studies, I'm sure you'd get a first class degree and you'd get a place. But, what do you want to study? And he said, I don't know, medicine. And she goes, okay, great. Tell me about medicine. And there was that block. And really, this journey of exploration is, we want you to be able to speak about your favorite subject, the subject that you're applying for university, in the same way that you would something you're deeply passionate about on a vocational kind of hobby level. So these are a combination of work experience, wider reading. If you're applying for a biological science degree or a science degree in general, consider subscribing to The New Scientist. Develop that interest in reading. In reading around your subject and showing an academic and professional interest in it. Another couple of things, Olympiads and essay competitions. So Olympiads, particularly for students if you're considering like a science degree, so mathematics, physics, there's some they're quite difficult. And it really demonstrates, if you've done, say, a physics Olympiad and you've been a finalist, or a maths Olympiad and you've been a finalist through your school, we'll often make these available. That really helps you stand out in your university application as an outstanding academic individual. Similarly for essay competitions, admittedly essay competitions more so for the social sciences or things like history, economics, politics, etc. But equally, kind of that's your equivalent there. And finally, volunteering. So volunteering, particularly for healthcare courses. So if any of you are interested in applying to medical schools in the UK, it's not just a recommended, it's pretty much a prerequisite these days. Are you volunteering in a care home? Are you volunteering looking after the elderly? Again, this is about building a case for you being a compassionate individual that is going to be a good doctor. And this isn't just the odd day here and there, that's dedicating regular time every week to something like a care home, to making sure that you are evidencing that passion on a daily basis. But yeah, generally speaking, these are the kind of key categories that you might want to consider. I mean, these are the kind of low-hanging fruit, for want of a better word. There are, of course, other things that you could be doing, but these are the things that, if you're struggling for ideas, that's where we'd recommend you start.
Fantastic. I can also attest to the point around experiences in volunteering, that a lot of our past interns, ambassadors, and contributors will tell us that being able to show that they not only study the subject at ZNotes, but that we're able to teach it back through study sessions, through notes, evidenced a lot of the fact that they were able to go above and beyond the curriculum and display their knowledge and actually help support them get into top universities. So the importance placed on not just experiences, but experiences relevant to your subject matter is critical. And I also remember spending a lot of time reading up about chaos theory, for example, when I applied to uni, and actually coming up in some of the applications as well. After I got through, some universities asked me, why did you apply with that kind of thought process? It makes a big difference for those top universities. So let's talk a little bit more about at what point you should be doing what. And we have quite a big group today, so we probably have students across kind of GCSEs all the way up to AS and A2. So what would be the different phases that you describe?
Yeah, so kind of pre-GCSE or early GCSE level, we kind of have two categories. Some of you, I'm sure many of you, will be relatively confident about what you think you want to study or what you think you want to go on to study at university. But for those of you that are younger, it is very much about exploration. I think, a lot of the time there is pressure from schools or parents or society to pursue a certain career route. You really need to make sure that is, you've explored that option before you really commit to it. And I think between kind of year 8 and year 10 or equivalent, how do you go about exploring those options? And it's as much about identifying what you don't like as it is what you do. At ProEd in our programs, we'll come into the details of this shortly, but last year we had a student year before last, we had a student whose father was relatively high up in his government, in his country's government for like law litigation. And because his dad was a high profile lawyer, he thought, great, I want to be a lawyer. And he's so glad he took our 2-week future lawyer program, because at the end of that experience, he'd actually said, I had no idea law was like that. It's way too wordy. I don't think I have the patience for that. I'm going to try something else. And at age 14, that's a super enriching and useful insight to gain at such an early age, because now it's okay, I'm not going to waste my time doing a 3-4 year law degree and then studying for the bar or whatever he wants to do in the future. He's managed to rule that out early. So year 8 to 10, explore, do as much as you can, read as much as you can, and start trying lots of different options and things over your summers, school holidays. Just get curious. The key is to start early. If you don't start early, don't do what I did, which is that when I applied to university, I left it till 4 or 5 months before, and I suddenly had to start reading loads of books so that I could think about what to reference in my personal statement. Trust me, you want it the other way around, where you have more than enough content to justify why you're applying for a course. For the older students, year 11 through 13, it's about refining that interest. Again, not just through work experience, although work experience becomes much, much more important as you get closer towards applying to university. But again, it's about demonstrating that passion in everything that you do, and commitment, understanding why the admissions tutors are going to care about a certain experience, and journaling. Keep track. Don't just do an experience and forget about it. Write it down. If you've done an internship at an engineering firm, what did you like about it? Why did you like that? Because this is all super, super useful content to refer back to when you do come to apply to university. Tailored experiences like internships, as well as work experience programs and volunteer work. So really the year 11 to 13 is refining that. Now, if you haven't started in year 11, 12, 13, it's not too late. You just got a bit of work to do, and you need to start thinking about developing that in the school holidays and throughout the term time as well.
Absolutely. I think there are 2 points I want to kind of highlight. One is the importance of kind of finding out what you like, but also what you don't like. I think many of our students, we go down a pathway where we feel like we already know exactly where we want to study, but people get through midway their degrees or even after their degrees and figure out that they don't want to be in that field. So doing it early and actually just saying that, discovering that there's something you don't like about is actually incredibly valuable. And the second point, which you said, is journaling. I think we often go out and try to do as many things as possible, especially during our kind of final years of GCSEs and A-levels, but we forget about the experiences. I think a very, very simple practice is to either keep literally a handwritten journal or write something. Write a blog article, write something which you can publish online. What was it like for you to do a 2-week internship in an engineering firm? What did that mean to you? What were the things that you learned about it? And that becomes a referenceable kind of piece of work that you can even talk about in your application. So I think it's a really, really important point that you made. So there are 3 themes that we want to touch upon in the actual application. Let's kick off with motivation. How do you kind of portray and really emphasize this in your right now? I guess we're talking about the actual personal statement for UCAS or essays for US applications or equivalent.
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
So how do you kind of validate your motivation during these kind of personal statement applications?
Sorry, it's a really bad line. I'm just trying to, one more time. Hopefully it can.
How do you kind of evidence your motivation for a certain course?
Yeah, good. Okay, thank you. It's clear. Your video's cleared up now as well, so I can see. Sorry about that, guys. How can you evidence it? So it's really reflecting back to the supercurricular stuff that we spoke about, and how does that feed into an admissions essay or personal statement? Like I say, don't make the mistake I did. I think this is exactly what we're talking about. It's coming into then writing a personal statement, you really want to focus on the hard hitting, the why. Usually the start of an admissions essay when it comes to personal statements or anything like that, or top university applications, is how do you answer the question why? Why a subject? Why entrepreneurship? Why finance? Why medicine? And using the portfolio that hopefully you will have built by that point means that you've got a plethora of opportunities and experiences that you can draw upon, and then it's just about reordering them and refining them. It's going, that 2-week experience that I had at an engineering firm. If I give an example, let's say you're writing a personal statement and you say, I want to study engineering because I'm good at physics. That's not particularly compelling. Whereas if you say, I've always been fascinated by how things work, and I've always thought engineering was the right path for me. I studied, part of my exploration journey was going to an engineering firm for 2 weeks where I worked on classic aircraft and aerospace engineering. As part of that process, I discovered the world of aerospace, and now I'm deeply passionate about pursuing it for the next 3 years. It's just a much more compelling story, and these admissions essays and using that evidence is so much more easily done when you have the data to draw on. So it kind of leads back to starting early, and that's how you can develop as much resource as possible to be able to reference these types of things.
Absolutely. It's the why with evidence, which is really, really key. I also really love the point, which is the final line that says that how do you understand that the motivation or evidence for not just the field, but actually a specific course? And it says that even a course with the same name are not the same. And that's very true. With the university, a civil engineering course could be looking very different from one university to another, or especially the kind of more newer kind of courses around environmental management or climate science are so nuanced in their module choices available. And if you're able to not only kind of connect your supercurricular to why you ended up choosing to do that course, and then bringing it back to say, actually, that course is very relevant to me because I can see that year 3 or year 2, I can do this specific module, or I know this work of this professor. I read their article recently or watched their lecture here. Suddenly, it kind of, and it doesn't need to be a lot. Like you obviously have very limited characters, but it just shows that you went that extra mile to understand why was that university in that course and that specific field that drew you, and you have evidence for it as well. So moving on to the second theme, preparedness for course.
Yeah, so we want to cover this one?
Yes, please, go ahead. Sure.
So preparedness for course ultimately looks at how has your learning so far helped you to be ready to succeed on the course itself. So a lot of these themes are taken from kind of UCAS, but also top. Generally, we find it's actually worth taking a step back here. Generally, we find that because the US system is so much broader, you've got the freshman year, you tend to try a few different things. Generally find that if students are preparing for top Russell Group university admissions, obviously there's a few nuances to how you tweak the style. You have to set SATs, the admission style is slightly different. But if you prepare for Russell Group, it's relatively easy to pivot to US applications, whereas it's not so easy the other way around, and we can talk about that in a little bit more detail later, but I thought that's just worth noting. But in terms of preparedness for course, it's really an opportunity for you to highlight what have you gained from your school or college other than or other formal learning opportunities. What have you done that makes you ready to be successful on their course of choice? They're looking for someone who's ultimately, the admissions teams are looking for someone who, you're not looking at, is this going to be a good student? They're looking, you're applying for engineering, is this person going to be a good engineer? And why are they going to be a good engineer? This might be something simple like, what have you learned on your A-level curriculum that sparked that interest, or GCSE curriculum that sparked that interest? Or it could be, for a biology course that you were walking in Borneo and you saw something in the jungle that really captivated your attention and spurred that interest. So they just want to know what's prepared you for this. But it's a hugely broad topic.
Absolutely. The other parts just to mention are the techniques that you use to study certain courses. For example, in my experience, I had to do further math on my own and self-study. And actually highlighting the fact that I had to self-study a course or get supplemental support from different sources or do online courses, anything that involved being proactive in this pursuit. It's also a skill set that can highlight how you're prepared for this course. when I went to study math, having done further math, it made a big difference to say that actually I'd gone out of my way and been proactive to be able to get this subject, which was not offered at my school. So may not be the case for everyone, but there may be cases and scenarios in your personal, like academic studies in your school, which has made you kind of have to do something which may not be as simple as before. It may be running study sessions with your peers. It may be writing revision notes, which are published on ZNotes. It may be, having extra support from a teacher outside of hours, or, all these different things that are still skills that you're developing and showing that actually in a university environment, this proactive, this self-starting, self-motivated learning experience is going to be a key for your success as well. It's the final theme. Rafi, what would you say about this?
Yeah, so the final theme is particularly relevant to ProEd and what we offer, but it's about other experiences. So whereas the first two kind of focus on current academic experience, are largely what your school can provide you with in terms of what you can expect in terms of your day-to-day school life. You can probably answer questions 1 and 2 with your personal life and school life. The third theme being preparation through other experiences. So what else have you done? This is the separates the best from the good applicants. And these quotes here are actually taken directly from UCAS, but they apply to many other university admissions all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
So the experiences featured here are likely to be varied. It could include self-directed extracurricular learning, so reading outside the school curriculum, for example, showing an interest in certain journals or academic literature. Involvement in sports or clubs, if that can demonstrate why they're right for the course, particularly, for example, if you were applying for something like medicine or physiotherapy, that might actually explain why you're interested in something. And employment or other work experience. Now, they didn't used to quote this directly, but now they are actually quoting work experience and employment as something specific that you can reference. And I know that work experience is really hard for students to find, and we'll come on to that shortly, but
Have I lost you, Rafi?
I'm back. I think I'm back now. Yeah. Don't know what happened there. So yeah, and then the second one was kind of what responses should you include in your reflection. This last one is the reflection on those experience. What activity are you referencing? Typically, this will be work experience or something similar, volunteer work. And what did you learn from it? They don't necessarily care that you went to an engineering firm. They care what you learned from that experience and how that fuels your passion for the subject. And that's a really, really important distinction to make. I was actually I was at a conference this weekend, and I was speaking to Yasmin Sawar, the Chief Education Officer at Oxford International College, and she made this point to every single person we met. It is all about why, for you, what is the reflective process and why is it important to you and what have you learned? Just saying that you've been in a hospital for 2 weeks doesn't say anything about why you want to become a doctor. And ultimately, what skills have you developed? This is critical to helping kind of map the journey. So all of those three kind of key subpoints within this theme are things that you should think about and add a tremendous amount of value to not just personal statements and entry essays, but also ultimately interviews when it comes to that.
It comes back to the point of the importance of recording those experiences, reflecting on them and figuring out what that experience actually brought to you, and then communicating that in your personal statement, making sure that the things that you're talking about are relevant to the course and skill that you're meant to be developing as well. So it's a full circle. It needs to be, I see so many personal statements that just are like a list of things that I've done, but I think I'd prefer, maybe you can validate this, Rafi, but to see a few very relevant experiences, but a very, very strong description of why that experience helped support things that you're doing or not supported, and vice versa.
Yeah. It's quality, not quantity. And if you have a high quantity of things that you've done, that's great. It's more to talk about, particularly at interview. But when it comes to writing and conveying that message, it's telling a story. It's as much telling a story as it is. It's not about telling them about everything that you've done. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of it in terms of how we prepare them. I think the next slide might be coming on to kind of how we can assist.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the just to kind of wrap up at that final stage is that my kind of key reflections are reflections of talking about reflections. Is number one, finding ways to understand what you're interested in. And that, especially at an early age, could mean that you just go out and be curious and try different experiences out. Ensure that you're doing things like wider reading, subscribing to journals, engaging with people in the industry at an earlier age. I know many of us are kind of limited sometimes by the people we speak to, and if our parents have a big influence or our schools have a big influence, we're not allowed to explore further. I think the ZNotes community provides a great way for you to speak to others who are at university, who are in a different context, who may have a different set of experiences to share. What does it look like? And then the second part to that is to think about how can you reinforce those interests through then pursuit of specific activities which are linked to those. So for example, if you're interested in climate science, then how can you go out and, whether it's reading up online, engaging in online academic content, engaging with experiences in industry people, and finally, I think the third thing was, how do you bring that together in an application where you set out your motivation, you set out your readiness for the program, your skills, your A-levels, your academics, your GCSEs, whatever it is, and finally reflecting on the experience that you have that kind of only highlight and kind of further emphasize your passion for your course. Do you think that's a fair summary?
Yeah, that's a very eloquently put summary, and don't think I really need to add anything to that. The only thing that I forgot to say earlier, which I think is super relevant, is if you are trying to get work experience opportunities in companies, do that yourself. Get help from people, but as an employer, having a student come to you directly and ask for work experience is so much more impactful than a school or a parent doing it for them. It shows that you're committed, it shows you're motivated, and it shows a level of maturity that makes people want to say yes to you. So my number one piece of advice is go through that process yourself, apply for work experience opportunities yourself, because it will pay itself back tenfold. Yeah, absolutely.
I always encourage, it's another social media account to set up, but set up LinkedIn and reach out to companies, people, industries that you're interested in. You'll find it surprising how many people will actually respond back to you. Not everyone will, and you'll have to take that. That's just part of the process. And I can assure you that I have hundreds, if not thousands, of ignored LinkedIn DMs of people I've reached out to who have never responded back to me. But I've continued to do that from the age of 16, 17 until today. And it's a big part of why ZNotes has grown to where it is today as well. So it's really showing commitment and outreach. And there are people who will have the time, and some people won't have the time, but those who will always be grateful and gracious in the responses. So coming back to you, Rafi. So 2 years ago, I had a chance to learn about what ProEd does. About a year ago, I had a chance to kind of explore and engage with some of your students during the program itself as well. So would love to learn a little bit more about what ProEd does and how we can kind of make that available to our ZNotes community.
Yeah, so brief kind of overview. So ProEd was set up in 2020. And I joined them a year or so later to help kind of really develop something that helps students. The whole model is predicated on the fact that students find it really, really difficult, and schools find it really, really difficult to find what I would class as kind of tangible work experience opportunities. It's really difficult unless you have a family friend, but then finding the enriching activities. It's all very well getting an internship at a law firm, but if you're just sat on reception for a week, you're not understanding what it's like to be a lawyer. You're understanding what it's like to be a receptionist. So it's really hard to find something that is going to provide students with that kind of immersive career experience to help with as we're talking about building on those supercurricular portfolio activities. Some of the top schools in the UK manage to do it. We work with a lot of the top schools in the UK for that reason. So immersive experiences for 13 to 18-year-olds. So we take students 13 through 18, largely held at Imperial College. So we operate at Imperial College London. My co-founder, Dr. Randall Perry, he was on academic staff at Imperial for 20 odd years. He's now in his mid-70s, taking a step back from kind of teaching work, but is still very much involved with the academic side of the academic world. And he remains a senior research scientist for the National Space Institute in the US. So still very much involved in what we're doing. But 13 to 18-year-olds, designed and delivered by industry professionals. So I think this is the thing that perhaps we offer that many others don't. Our courses aren't delivered by kind of school teachers or PhD students. They're very much designed and delivered by industry professionals to provide that tangible, practical insight into the careers that we offer. So as an example, our Future Doctor program has been designed and is co-delivered by a general surgeon registrar from Imperial College Hospitals. So he takes time off work to help our students understand about the medical field. All of our courses are super practical. They're supposed to be. We want to have those experiences that can be reflected upon, not just academic seminar sessions. And we offer seven career paths. So if we go to the next slide, I can give you a briefly touch on exactly which careers we offer. So we're more of a STEM specialist. I think partly because of the access to industry that we have in London, we'd rather focus on doing a few subjects well than being super broad. So there are other providers out there that I'd be happy to link people to if they're interested in kind of more of the arts or social sciences. But for us, it's things like computer science, banking, engineering, entrepreneurship, which is new this year, super popular. It was on very widely requested, perhaps a little bit more creative than banking, law, medicine, and psychology. So those are the seven that we offer over the course of 1 week, 2 weeks in the summer. Typically, we also offer programs around the world, but that's something we're kind of scaling up at the moment. It's online and in at Imperial College in the summer.
Amazing. So students come over, spend 2 weeks or a week in London. Sessions happen within Imperial College London, and they're run and delivered by industry leaders and experts.
Yes, and I guess one of the exactly what I was going to say next. All of our programs feature a day in industry. So yes, we have industry professionals coming in every day. They'll have different specialties. So if we're taking banking and finance, an example, our course lead has spent a career in corporate finance, but we'll have people from private equity, people from hedge funds. Last year, we had speakers from BlackRock and other kind of top firms, as well as things like corporate law, which is very relevant to things like banking. So we'll have a really wide range of professionals coming in, and we call them workshops. They don't deliver lectures as such. It'll be really designed with a view to giving you an idea, is this a sector that I want to be working within? And again, help you find that content that you can reference. So that's the same across all 7 subjects. They all have a day in industry. And if we go to the next slide.
Yep.
At the end of the course, we have a number of different things that students can get. Again, we're not just a summer school that we want students to kind of wash their hands of the experience at the end of the course. We've designed these with a view to providing really tangible value to our students. So you'll get a certificate of completion, which is relatively standard. You'll get a tutor written report with personal comments. But in my opinion, the most value that you get is the letter of recommendation, which is co-signed by our industry partners. And what that means is you get how many hours you studied, exactly what you covered, and our industry partners will co-sign, which means if you then go apply for work experience, our courses also cover things like putting together CVs. You can use that to help further your academic journey and career with a view to applying to university. For those of you that are taking the Duke of Edinburgh Award, if you're studying in the UK or international school, we can be classed as a residential component of your Gold Award. You just have to ask your DofE leader at your school. And then we have something called the Global Space Design Challenge, which is an awesome charity that we've been working with since day one. They've been at Imperial and operating around the world for the last 20 years. And on that day, all of the students come together to form multidisciplinary teams. And you're given a big project to solve, like, humans setting up a civilization on Mars. How do we even go about starting to think about something like that? And really, the skill there is it's rare that students are put in big groups and taught to self-organize and learn about how to work as part of a dynamic team. You'll appoint your own CEO and communications officer and finance officer, and all the different career interests will work together to solve the problem, which is a super unique opportunity, which is always very well received. And of course, you get a certificate for that as well. At the end of our residential courses, students will also get a personalized career session, which will help you kind of get an idea of, okay, I've worked this experience, maybe a few weeks or months afterwards. How have I used it? And the goal of that session is to make sure that we're really helping you make the most of that session to kind of kickstart the next stage of your development. So that's just some of the kind of first starting points that we think would be useful. And yeah, the next slide I think is a sample letter of recommendation. So as I mentioned earlier, you can see this is for the engineering program. I won't go into it in too much detail. You can just see that the bottom right there, it's co-signed by the chief engineer from the aerospace engineering company that we work with. So really tangible value there for our student community.
Amazing. That's super powerful, and I think just to clarify that this is in person, which means that students, if they're interested to come over, they will fly in to London for that week or for those 2 weeks to be part of the programs. And was there an online component as well, or is that
we offer separate? There are separate online programs that are available. Obviously, they don't get the day in industry, but you get the same access to industry professionals. It's still run by doctors and lawyers and bankers, but yeah, it's perhaps a more cost-effective way of doing it. And also, it's a week, so you can do just a week online instead. So there's a few options available there for different price points and different students that are interested. But kind of with price and kind of product in mind, if we go and pop onto the next slide, we've got an exclusive offer for basically the whole of the ZNotes community. So we wanted to give something back. There's no point in trying to do something with you guys and create value for you guys. So there's basically 10% off every course on our website, available on our website. That's all the online courses, all the residential courses. You can either scan the QR code here. I know perhaps Zubair, you can talk a little bit more about the other options available to them on the platform, on the ZNotes platform. But ZNotes 2024 will get you 10% off any of the courses available.
Amazing. We're very grateful for that. And yeah, we've also just recently launched the special offer section on your dashboard. So if you logged in on your ZNotes website recently, you'll see that you have achievements, and below that there's special offers. And ProEd is our first special offer to be live now. ProEd has kind of kindly sponsored the AS Computer Science course and the AS Business course, which is kind of supporting us to continue doing what we do and grow the ZNotes platform as well. So very happy and excited by this collaboration and partnership. The funny thing, and maybe an anecdote to end this, is I remember walking in the session last year, summer of 23. We were in that big lecture hall at the bottom of Imperial College, and I delivered a short kind of talk, and the response from the students was that, hey, we know ZNotes, we use ZNotes. So I wonder whether there are already users of ZNotes who've been to this type of course before, and we just wanted to make sure that our community gets a special support and offer as well. So thank you so much, Rafi, for extending that to our community. We have had an amazing time learning from you and your experiences of setting people up to the top unis. What we'll do now is open up to Q&A. I know I've been watching, there have been quite a lot of questions that have been coming through. So we'll try to do as many of them as possible. Some of them we'll try to stick to those which are super relevant to the discussions we have today. Some other kind of questions may be responded to later on. Sure. And yeah, so I'll ask Ariane to help me with questions that are top rated questions, so I can ask them to you, Rafi. Sure. As well as that, if there's anyone who feels confident and wants to unmute and share the question live, feel free to raise your hand, and we'll bring you onto the stage as well. So one question which came from you, Foru, and which I think is a very good point, a good question, is that what are some good places to find books for your course that are relevant to use in your application? Because a lot of the time academic books are very hard to distinguish and figure out and read up on.
Yeah, so I've got a progressive answer to that question and a traditional answer to that question. So the traditional answer to that question would be, firstly, a lot of your teachers, like you're at a school, a lot of your teachers are going to know, if you're applying for biology, a lot of them will have studied that at undergraduate level. A lot of them are going to know the key texts. So the first point of call is reach out to people that you know to be experienced. They will have things, not only do they know you personally, but they will know kind of which texts are the classic texts to consider, and other areas that you could develop as an individual. I think another area is university websites. If you look at university course websites, a really good way to check it is you could have a look at some of the areas, perhaps some of the topics that the undergraduate. I know this is what I did. I looked at the undergraduate degree I was looking for. I looked at some of the topics that were going to be covered in the first year of the undergraduate. And then I looked at kind of entry-level books for those courses. So that's kind of how I got started. The progressive answer would be utilize AI. We've got all these chatbots that are super well connected to the internet, and they can really give quite nuanced answers as to what the key texts are likely to be. Something as simple as saying, I'm interested in studying blank at University X. I'm this age student. What should I consider reading as introductory texts? That's a really efficient way to get a very relatively extensive reading list, and it's something that I do. So that would be my two kind of 2 cents worth.
Amazing. So simply going on to the website, the course that you're interested in, checking out the recommended books for them, because again, it's about accessibility as well, and making sure that the content is actually relevant and accessible at the level that you're studying at. A question, do certifications apart from Olympiads and stuff the school offers also help in university applications, and how much so? So within the schools, the things that the programs that are offered and the certifications that come with it. With
ProEd, or just generally speaking, Olympiads?
Generally speaking, yeah.
Yeah, so generally speaking, I think this is a really good question, because it's something that a lot of people go, okay, well, is it certified by X? Is it, does it carry weighting? I think when we're talking about, for example, Olympiads in their own right are respected by universities because they're known to be very difficult. Same for certain essay competitions. By the way, going onto university websites like Cambridge, Oxford, LSE, there's lots of lists of different essay competitions that they run. So if you're interested, they are all there. And a lot of them are actually endorsed and encouraged by some of the top universities from particularly from the UK. But when we're talking about reading when we're talking about generally university, what can you do to reflect upon your experiences? It's not about whether it's prestigious or whether a university has endorsed it. It's not saying, okay, this one has a University of Oxford stamp on it, therefore it's going to be more beneficial. Again, we're talking about building that portfolio, that evidence. So it's not about whether it's accepted or not. Worth saying, actually, there's a lot of companies out there, unfortunately, that say, this is going to get you into Oxford, this is going to get you into Cambridge. Anyone who says that's lying. There's no such thing. So just stick to things that are going to help you develop that interest in something that you can use to evidence it. Don't worry too much about whether it's got a prestigious stamp at the bottom of it.
Thank you so much, Rafi. I have a couple of questions. I might jump in to answer some of these as well. So one of the questions was around, should we give IELTS? We have to write essays for uni applications. Do you recommend doing that? So my quick response to that is that IELTS are key if you're applying to, or any English test, proficiency test is important if you're applying for a university abroad, both the US and the UK. IELTS isn't the only option. There's the TOEFL, there's also the Pearson test of English, and they're at different cost bases, but you will need that for any international student application. Another question that came up was around whether IB has an edge over Cambridge A-levels in terms of university acceptance recognition. I don't know, Rafi, whether you have a take on that?
Yeah, I do. So generally speaking, you have IB schools in the UK. I'm more kind of well-read on UK university admissions. The only thing I would say is IB is respected. The IB is very respected by the UK. But what they will ultimately, they will translate IB grades into equivalent A-level grades, because when you apply to a UK university, there are 3 A-levels that they will consider, 3 A-level grades that they'll take the top 3, and that'll build up your offer. So they'll convert your IB scores into equivalent A-level scores ultimately, and that's how you get your offer. I think there's a broader point to be made here, which is when you're picking, if you have the choice to choose IB versus A-level, really think about the IB. You have to study far more subjects. So A-level, you're studying 3 or usually 4 in the first year, 3 in the second year. Typically, some do 4 and 4. Depends how academically capable you are. So generally, that's the case. So it means for A-levels, you tend to go quite deep. You go so deep in A-levels, in fact, that if you were to apply to a US university, first year of university and even second year of US university is quite considerably less advanced than last year of A-level. And then it's really third and fourth year of US unis that start to catch up. So if you know you want to study something like engineering, firstly, there's a debate to be had around UK or US. We can come on to that perhaps. But if, let's say, you're sure that engineering is right for you, then really you want to be, why do 6-7 subjects? You could be doing physics, maths, and chemistry, or physics, maths, further maths, for a engineering degree, and it means you can specialize much sooner. So in the answer to do universities care IB or A level, the answer is probably not. There's not much in it in the UK, in terms of they're both respected. But if you're particularly good at sciences or maths or physics, and you want to apply for engineering, then perhaps pick A levels as a more direct route in.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting take. Another question that's come up, which is quite a kind of a scenario-based question, but your take would be, I think it would be also helpful for others to listen into as well. So Intergalactics MF says, my current scenario is that I'm very passionate about cybersecurity and spent a great deal of my time gathering certifications, but my country does not have a good quality cybersecurity course in any university. Is it worth to pursue an undergraduate course abroad if I know this is my passion?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, firstly, whether you can study abroad is going to be dependent. I know international student fees in the UK and US are tremendously high. So, there's always that dilemma for students and parents. It's, can I afford to go to the UK at paying international student fees? But on the whole, kind of answering the question in itself, if money were no object, if you want to do cybersecurity and you want something that's quite specifically cybersecurity, there's no reason why you shouldn't go elsewhere to pursue that if you feel like you're really not going to get a lot out of the course. That being said, when you join university, you don't know what you don't know. And, for example, an entry-level computer science course or something like that will open your eyes to so much more than just cybersecurity. That's something that you can always come onto at master's level or even PhD level if you wanted to go that far. And also it's a much more, let's say money were a problem, you could do an entry-level computer science course in your home country. There's nothing stopping you from going to the UK or US for masters specializing in cybersecurity. So there are always ways around that. But my first thing is, you don't know what you don't know. So many students have I was actually speaking to a student not so long ago who's just doing a secondary available, and he's convinced he wants to be a geneticist. And I'm saying, okay, great, you're interested in genetics, but the reason why undergraduate biology degrees are so broad is because there is so much that you're not going to know. So I'd say I'd usually err on the side of, unless you are absolutely convinced that is your life's purpose, broader isn't necessarily worse. It opens your eyes to things that could, actually take your interest more than cybersecurity, perhaps.
It's a great point. A very bad analogy, but for a long time, the thing that I wanted to study most was physics. And then the reason I loved it was all around the kind of general relativity and theoretical physics specifically. And then I took it one step back and actually changed my degree choice to go and study mathematics, because I realized that that was one abstraction layer higher. And then by the end of my third and fourth year degrees, I was able to choose modules which allowed me to do cosmology, general relativity, algebraic topology, and the topics that I loved. So I think the beauty of generalist courses, especially sciences like biology, chemistry, pure sciences that are not as specialists, allow you to make a lot of flexibility and make that course your course. Not all universities are like that, but I also know that, for example, during my math degree, I was able to do a course from computer science department and learn Java. There is kind of obviously the scaffolding and the structure that a university provides, but at the same time, there's a lot of flexibility, and you can take that specialization your own way, as long as you're proactive and engage with it as well. Next question. So this came up like twice in different forms, so I'm just going to kind of combine together. Suba says, what if work experience is tough where we live? Like there aren't many opportunities or resources available. What do you suggest we do in that situation?
Yeah, so again, work experience is about why. If we take a step back and think about why is work experience important at all, it's about identifying what you like about a subject and then reflecting on that experience, and also ultimately evidencing your passion for your subject. So there are, of course, other ways you can do that. Showing a vocational interest in your subject is super important. But if you're talking about work experience in particular, universities are very understanding of the fact that it isn't always possible for students to get in-depth work experience. There are lots of online work experience opportunities, obviously depending on whether you have budget for that type of thing. We offer online precisely for that reason. There are residential work experience style programs. Ultimately, anything that can connect you to an industry or give you access to industry, people from industry, is going to be super, super useful for you to help develop that side of your kind of academic journey. So look at work experience programs, look at online programs that are going to help open your eyes to certain areas, and email as many people as you can. Just because things aren't going back to that point of being proactive. I've got perhaps a bit of a tangent, but a really good story about perseverance. So one of my friends runs a very successful business. I won't say which, but he wanted a contract. I don't know how many of you heard of John Lewis. They're a very big department store here in the UK, very famous, really high quality goods. And he had a product that he thought would fit really well in John Lewis. And they had a really good couple of years, and they somehow managed to find one of the buyer's emails at John Lewis. And it took him, he got into John Lewis last year for the first time, and it was a tremendous success. But he emailed him every single day for a year and a half before he got a response. And he got a response only because the guy was like, what have I got to do to get rid of this guy, to stop him from emailing me? And it's just a really good story of perseverance, and you can apply the same thing to work experience. There might not be anything, official work experience programs, but there may well be people you can email and reach out to and ask for some volunteer work experience. And the more persistent you are, the more likely you are to get it.
It's a great point. And again, the point, what you're saying is that there may not be any formal pathways, but it's just being proactive and engaged.
Yep.
So getting on to another question. You talked about a portfolio. I'm trying to find the full question again. Actually, I'll answer another question first, and then we'll come back, because this is a little bit outside the university applications. But Intergalactic again asks, how do you deal with burnout, specifically when you don't really enjoy most of the subjects you're studying aside from computer science? Maybe my kind of feeling there is that I always had a way of interleaving different subjects. So kind of taking one up, I had obviously loved math. So I would have math as kind of my treat, set out between my less fun subjects. During IGs, the one subject which I did not really enjoy was economics and all the essay writing questions. So I had to really force myself to be able to do that. So by making sure that I was mixing up the subjects, I was able to kind of stay motivated. And at the end of the day, I kept looking at where these subjects lay and helped me get to my target goal, which was a university and then a job. And I think knowing the full breadth of it was helpful. And then, of course, working in kind of very clear, distinctive time blocks. So I used Pomodoros, which was very valuable for me. And I also maintained my personal well-being as a really important part of my studying skills. So maintaining my physical activities, my sleep schedules, and my eating habits were super important for me to make sure that I felt good and not burnt out, essentially. Anything you would add to that, Rafi? Oh.
Yeah, I think there's for those of you who can relate to being a perfectionist, when I was doing my GCSEs in particular, I was so focused on things needing to be perfect that I think I actually created a lot more work for myself that perhaps wasn't necessary. To get an A or an A star or a B or whatever target grade you're going for, you don't need 100% in the paper. So that's the first thing I'd say is, if you're a perfectionist, sometimes less is more. It's about using your time efficiently and effectively as opposed to being perfect. And I know that can be really hard to hear. But for me, I performed averagely in my GCSEs. But by the time I got to my A levels, I decided to be a little bit more pragmatic in the way that I studied. And I got really good grades at A level, largely because I wasn't so focused on needing to be perfect in every single answer. So I think that's the first thing I'd say. In terms of lifestyle, for those of you that are younger, I have a few non-negotiables. It's really worth for my life that it's really worth doing so that you don't get burnt out. So for Zubair, I know for you it's running. For me, it's something physical, at least 3-4 times a week. So I will go to the gym at least 3 times a week, often 4. And I also have a morning routine that I stick to every day, and that can really help with stress levels. So I'd have a couple of rules, like no phone for the first hour when I wake up. I always meditate in the morning, and I always have something that I learn in the morning. And if you wake up and go straight into stress, it can be really bad for burnout. So giving yourself just an hour to not get absorbed by everything is super useful for me.
It's a very good point, having those kind of grounding principles for yourself. And I think it's at this age when you're still at school is a great moment to be able to kind of develop those habits as well, which are going to be important as you keep going through life. Vansh asks whether taking a large number of AS and A-level subjects is beneficial if you can cope. They're thinking of taking 5.
So that's a very subjective question. So the answer is why? So, if you want to keep your options open for A2 in terms of you're not sure what you want to study yet and you have the academic capacity to do 5 and do well, then do 5. Great, explore 5, but not at the expense of us literally just talking about burnout. I think it's worth remembering that universities are only considering 3 A-levels in the UK. They're not looking at 5, they're not looking at 6, they're not looking at 7, they're looking at 3. So if you're going to be doing 5 and actually at the expense of the quality of the grades you're going to be getting, then don't do 5. And similarly for A2, some students will do 4 at AS and 4 at A2. Only do 4 at A2 if let's say you're really, really good at maths, and maths and further maths are a given, you don't have to do much work, then you could consider doing more subjects. But the guiding principle is make sure that you are achieving the highest grade possible in all of them before you take on another one. But the biggest message is the universities aren't looking at more than 3. They will take your 3 top grades, and often they will be prescriptive about which type of subjects you need to qualify. So if you're applying for medicine, you need biology, chemistry, and a third science, which is typically maths or physics. They're not looking, if you do sociology and politics because you're interested in it, great, but it's not going to count towards what the university will consider.
Fantastic. Really valuable. I think the most important thing, if you can get the grades, yes, it's a good test, but also remember you're going to be having an opportunity cost when you're studying for so many A-levels. We are coming to an hour, and I think it's been super exciting, and the questions and the number of people who joined is reflective of the excitement in the community. I'm going to try to summarize a couple of questions, maybe do 1 or 2 more, and then we'll wrap up, Rafi.
Sure.
So there were a couple of questions around where to find work experiences. Can we find online experiences? Does ProEd offer cybersecurity? I think that the summary of those is that we've talked a lot about during the earlier session that we're recording as well, where it explains how do you be proactive in discovering and finding those experiences. ProEd, as we've shared, does an online and a residential in London experience sets for 7 different fields. More details will be live as well and on their link on their website. And the question that I want to touch upon was someone infamous says that they finished IGCSEs recently and have a lot of free time on their hand. What do you recommend I do to utilize the time to better my profile? Rafi, anything to add there? Like free time, what do you do with that?
Yeah, so if you finish your IGCSEs, I mean, assuming that you haven't yet got into your A-levels and you feel like you're going to get good grades, and I know we're coming up to exam season soon, so the first thing is make sure you got your ducks in a row, make sure you're ready. But if you really feel like you are, which many students will be, start exploring. If you know what you want to study now, even at university level, it's never too early to start exploring. So if we use the cybersecurity as an example, do more research, watch loads of YouTube videos, subscribe to certain channels, news feeds, just start to absorbing external content, show some curiosity. If you aren't sure, start somewhere. If you think you're broadly interested in science, subscribe to The New Scientist. There is so much cool stuff. I'm a avid weekly reader, a monthly reader of the New Scientist. I read it every time it comes out, and there's some super interesting stuff in there that might help guide your interest. So I'd say just get curious, try as much as you can, and if you know what you want to study, zero in on that, and just start reading as much as you can and absorbing as much information as you can.
Fantastic. From my side as well, I guess the ZNotes community provides a great space for you to meet and connect with others to can help you kind of become accountability partners in certain courses online. We talked a lot about online experiences. Our internship, ambassador, and contributor experiences are all online, but they create a whole lot of value for the impact they derive. in the student community, as well as develop your skills as well. So do check that out. We'll send a link, or Ariane, if you can put down a link for the ambassador, contributor, and internship application forms. I want to thank Rafi again for joining in and sharing such amazing and deep insights on the whole application process and how to set ourselves up for success at global universities. Again, final reminder is ProEd have been amazing to sponsor ZNotes, and they're going to be offering a 10% discount across all their courses. And the special offer is within your dashboard, as well as we'll put a link in this chat as well. Rafi, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciated your time.
Yeah, and just as a final touch from me, if anyone does have any kind of burning questions, we're always happy to help. We love helping our student community and helping. So I'm sure you'll find us on our various social media, LinkedIn, anything like that. We're always happy to answer any questions or support you in any way. So thank you very much for watching. It's been a really insightful and fun experience for me, and looking forward to see if we can support any of the ZNotes community.
Fantastic. Thank you.